Well, earlier on the news, we told you that Nigeria's economy experienced an increase of 3.4% in its GDP, according to the NBS, National Bureau of Statistics, for Q3 2024. And now to put this in proper perspective, we're joined by Olufemi Babem, partner, tax KPMG West Africa. Thank you so much, Olufemi, for joining us on the news. Can you please unmute your device so that we can hear you?
Yes, it's on mute now. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you so much for joining us. So tell us, which sectors would you say contributed to that 3.46% that we saw, of course, an increase to Nigeria's economy if you compare it to Q2 of 2024?
Okay, so the growth we have witnessed in Q3 2024 compared to Q2 2024 has largely been driven by the strong growth in the agri sector, primarily from crop production. And I think the major reason for this is the harvest season, right? So, you know, locally we have the planting season, we have the harvest season. And so we are beginning to go into the harvest season, and that's why we see a lot of the significant growth really driving the GDP coming from the crop production sector. That's where you compare the Q3 2024 numbers to the Q2 2024 numbers. And so that really is where the major growth has come from on the quarter-on-quarter basis. And closely related to that would be the road transport, which falls under the service sector. And that's, I mean, as you would expect, many of the farmers and producers will transport, after harvesting, will transport their produce to the markets. And so those are the two major drivers of growth in Q3 2024 when compared to Q2. So but in other sectors, we've seen a rebound from the dip we had in Q2. So you have the construction and real estate, which has seen significant growth also coming from the dip that we witnessed in Q2. And that really is coming from many of the Nigerians in diaspora. When you speak to some of the real estate developers, you see an uptake in development, mostly from Nigerians in diaspora that are coming back home to acquire their properties, either after they're done with the summer break, or they're intending to come home for the Christmas holidays. And so those are the major drivers in terms of construction, in terms of the growth in Q3 GDP numbers. So
if we did see growth in the agricultural sector also contributing more to the country's GDP, why didn't we see a drop in the price of foodstuff in the market? One would have thought that the higher yield would actually, reduce the costs of having to purchase foodstuff in the market, knowing fully well that food inflation is actually what actually drives high inflation in the country.
So typically in economics, there's usually a lag between cause and effect, right? So you would expect that once harvest season begins and many more produce begin to hit the market, you expect over time, it's most likely won't happen immediately, but you expect that over time, prices of commodities will drop or reduce a bit, maybe not significantly. I know I was speaking to some friends over the weekend, and they mentioned the fact that at least I think it was either rice or gari. They had talked about the fact that the price of one of these commodities has begun to drop. Now it's interesting to note that if you look at the trend in 2023 compared to 2024 and even 2022, for the agri sector crop production, the trend has always been cyclical, which means, we would have the high when harvest season starts, and then when planting season, then comes back in, the contributions to GDP drops slightly. And so it's a year in, year out practice, which towards the end of the year, you see a lot more production. Some prices may drop, but then that would then be tapered again by the fact that we're going into the Christmas holidays. And so marketers will try, or retailers will try to make a lot more profits from their sale during the period.
Okay, so what about the
production?
What about the oil
Sorry,
sector? I'd like to just get your view about the oil sector, because we looked at 5.57% GDP growth. How significant was that?
So the 5.57% contribution is reasonable if you consider where we're coming from, as being a very oil dependent economy. The 5.57 is reasonable. Like I said, for the non-oil sector, contributed about almost 95%, to make up the balance. What that shows clearly is that there's been a significant shift from oil and gas to other sectors like agri, other sectors like trade, and construction, telecoms, which has taken it up a very significant bit. So the economy is quite diversified.
Okay.
But if you think about the fact that the government has a target, to grow crude oil production to about 2 million barrels next year and about 4 million barrels by 2030, then you would slightly see the contributions of that sector increase.
Okay.
Maybe not to the ratio we had previously.
Okay.
But we expect that to grow slightly.
Yes. All right. Mr. Olufemi Babem, thank you so much for sharing this, of course, information with us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on your program.
You're
Thanks.
welcome.